Luke 15, let me read from verse 11. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am, starving on death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. We're going to be covering the first part of the story. There are 3 actually characters. And 3 characters are obviously, you have the father, and you have 2 sons. Every parable is spoken by Jesus in a certain context. Luke chapter 15 verse 1 begins with this way. The Pharisees, they just did not like the way that he was spending so much time with so-called the sinners. He welcomed them and he had a meal with them. If God is holy and if he is pure, there is no way he's going to associate or relate to these sinners. We have God, and then me, and then the others, people. And, or you can say, the world. It's basically, when we think about Christian life, usually we think about this, God and me. And we can say relationship. And I have a relationship with God. But then when we look at the world, we're very much concerned about how God deals the people in the world. So how God deals. How God deals with people, the world. And we usually think when I become a Christian, I have to separate myself from the world. And I need to focus on God, my relationship with God. The only time we look at the world is we look object. We look at the world, I would like to say, project. I need to reach out to the world and share the gospel. So my interest in the world is simply, I don't love the world, but I work in the world. So I go in there and I make money, but I come back. And when I think about God, it's my relationship with God. So we tend to separate. We tend to separate between God and the world. So only time that I take interest in the world, either my career, my job, or to share the gospel, evangelism. Those are the only two reasons why that I am concerned about the world. God is holy, and God is separated from the world because this is unholy. I am here. I have to keep myself pure from the world. So therefore, I need to focus on God, and I need to keep all the commandments. I have to, all the rules, and I have to have the spiritual discipline. And so when Jesus came, and rather than doing this, what they were doing, God and me, if Jesus spent most of his time praying and he doesn't reach out to the people and he only spends time with the religious leaders, they would probably like him. But most of the time, Jesus spent time with the people in the world, and they didn't like that. Right? But isn't that how it is with us? As we focus on God and me, sometimes we just don't like the way God deals with other people. We just don't like that. Why is God allowing evil? And they do business, and they lie and they cheat, but they're doing so well. And if God is holy, and if God is in control, so in a way we just don't like the way God deals the people in the world. To understand this dynamic, God, me, and the world, and it only goes this way. We see it this way, and this is a relationship. There is no relationship when you have two arrows going back and forth. That's the relationship. There is no relationship, and there is no relationship. So we have God, the way he deals with the world, whether he is judging the world, whether he is rebuking the world, or whether he is separated from the world. And then for us, like God, I need to separate myself from the world. And if I ever want to show love of God, then I go out and what? They become the evangelism project. I go and try to share the gospel because I love the people. How does God deal the people with the world? And that's what the parable is all about today. And that helps us to think about this. All right? So let's look at the people of the world. The second son, one day he asked his father, is there any way you could divide up the inheritance? And the father said, sure. So he divided up he took that money and he went off. The question that you and I have to ask is, why did he do that? Why did he ask his father? While the older son did not ask for that. Why did he want to do that? It's not a good thing to do before your father dies. Why do you think that the second son asked his dad, I want my share? Why did he do that? If we think about the relationship between the father and the second son, why did he do that? And it seems like he removed himself from the father's, his hometown, far away, as a matter of fact, it says, another country. Why did he do that? What do you think? Take a guess. Huh?
It's not as if he would have been much better, much happier.
Happier, right?
When separate from his father.
Right, right. You know, many people see God as someone who If I don't have relationship with God, I'll be much happier. In a way, Christianity really seems like it restricts people because I don't have freedom, right? And we all have that, there is this inner desire that we want to be free. We want to be free from God. It will be much better if God does not exist, because then my life will be much happier because I can do whatever I want to. There is no restriction. And we always, it's a human nature that we seek to be independent. And we believe that that's where the happiness is. If I could have this freedom, then I will be much happier. So the question is, why some Christians, they're not happy? Why aren't they happy? Because they feel their life is restricted. Sunday you feel like you're obligated to go to church, right? And maybe that's the only time that you have, it's like a day off. And you have to go to church, right? And then you feel like you have to pray, right? When I don't have a particular reason to pray, so I got to pray. It's like you don't want to talk to the Father because you don't really need to talk to Him, but then out of obligation, you talk to Him, So that's how people are. Second son felt that life would be much better outside of my father's influence. And this is what we find in Psalm chapter 2. Psalm 2 tells us that you have the kings and the rulers, and they want to rule. And they said, well, let's cut this line off. Let's cut this so that God no longer has authority over our life. But isn't that what happened in Genesis chapter 3? When Satan came and told Eve, if you eat this, then you will become like God. You will have the authority. He doesn't have to tell you this is right or wrong. You call the shot. You decide. Right? Why does somebody else have to tell you? You can be free. And that's what we see here in this parable. Second son asked his dad. Basically, he's saying, I want to be free. I want to be free. I want to live the way I want. Right? Now, it happens to be in this parable, he did get to enjoy his life. Right? And he just squandered all the money that he had, but he did enjoy whatever that was. If he had more money, he would have enjoyed more, but then his money ran out. So what do you do? And then he decided to come back. Well, let's think about that for a moment. Not everyone's story ends up like this. They move outside of the rule. They move outside of God's rule, and they're enjoying, and they continue to enjoy. It's not like after a couple of years, their money ran out and said, oh, now I should go back to God. Well, you don't find people like that. So what's happening in the story is this doesn't happen every day. So Jesus is sharing this parable not to teach us that when you sin enough, you're going to get tired and then you're going to come back to God. That never happens. That person right now is away from living apart from God and he's doing whatever he wants. We'll wait. We'll wait until he runs out of his energy. We'll wait until he spends all his money and then he's going to come back to God. We rarely find someone doing that in reality. It doesn't teach about, well, you just go out and do whatever you want. But you're going to get tired and you're going to get sick of this sinning, so therefore now you're going to come back to God and God will wait for you. That's not what this story is about. What this story is, you have a father. This father, he's waiting. He patiently waits. We don't know when he will come back, but he believes that he will. And he waits. And that's the first thing that we find, that how does he relate to the people in the world? Well, first, God patiently waits. God is waiting. How long? Well, 2 Peter chapter 3 tells us that God is very patient. One day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like one day. For him, for us, wow, it's taking a long time for us. For God, it may be just one day. That's how much he's waiting. And that's why we see the grace of God. How come he's not doing anything about this world? It's because he's waiting. So that's one thing that we notice here in this parable. So God is waiting. Waiting for what? Secondly, is that waiting for people to have that relationship with God again. So he's waiting. And when someone comes back to God or comes to God, the important thing here is there is rejoicing. The Pharisees and the other people were upset at Jesus because they could not rejoice with Jesus. Only way you can experience this joy with God when you're able to rejoice together with God. And God rejoices when you have the sinners come back. That's when God rejoices. So Christian happiness is when you're able to rejoice and understand what God takes delight in. What does he delight? Have we thought about that? Does he really take delight when we become wealthy? When our prayers are answered? It could be more like we're happy, we're glad, but we don't know if God is glad. So we never ask this question. If we have a relationship with God, then it is like a couple, and here his wife is preparing the food because she likes this food and because she enjoys cooking, but the whole time she doesn't care whether her husband is really enjoys that food or not. Right? We like God because he answered our prayer, because he guides me, he protects me. But then, deep inside, we're not happy. How come? Because we sense the restriction. We would rather want to be out here, because that's going to make us happy. If I can break this restriction and be like that second son, if I could just have the freedom to go out to the world and do whatever I want, then I can really experience that happiness. But then I can't. Why? Because I have a relationship with God. I need to respect God. If I do that, God might punish me. And what we find here is that God doesn't punish. The Father did not punish the Son. There was freedom, right? And that freedom did not last much, but made it worse. So you and I have to ask the question, can I be happy with God? Or do I feel that my life can be much happier if I can just leave? So in that sense, I think the people here have a better chance to be happy than the Christians. So you and I have to ask the question, can I be happy with God? Or do I feel that my life can be much happier if I can just leave? So in that sense, I think the people here have a better chance to be happy than the Christians. It seems like the people in the world are happier because they are free, they can do whatever they want, there is no restriction to go along with that. They have the finance, they have everything here. But for me, I can't be happy. I'm just too busy with church. I have to do this, do that. And I look at that world and I said, oh, those sinners. But deep inside, I wish I had that. That's why, again, going back to what somebody said the other day, isn't that better to live any way you want? Our money will run out and we will actually come back to God. That's not the point of this parable. The parable is reminding us, are we happy? Can we rejoice? Is there a happiness in my Christian life? And if there is no happiness in my Christian life, what could that be? Is that because of lack of money? Is it because God does not answer my prayer? Where the real joy is. And God is saying, the only way that we can rejoice is to understand and experience that God rejoices. Right? Perhaps we have been looking at the wrong. It seems like when I first became Christian, I heard that God loves me. So he sent Jesus Christ and he died on the cross. He loves me. So I said, wow, that's a great love. So what did I do? I commit my life to Christ. But after that, it's all downhill, to be honest. There was a joy and excitement that only lasted for about a couple of months. And then from that point on, it's downhill. Downhill.
I think we set ourselves up for this because we think of the Christian life being living like a life of suffering now because it's only temporary in exchange for eternal happiness, and we almost just accept that as, this is the path I need to walk. So
we're just passing through this world.
But we know that when this is all over,
it'll pay off.
It'll pay off. You guys experiencing the kingdom of God every day of our lives, and it's not just let's wait until we die.
But throughout church history, there has always been that tension between the two, right? So if you are really serious about becoming a disciple of Christ, then you hear what Jesus told a rich young ruler, sell everything that you have and you follow me and you will have treasure in heaven. So people took that seriously during the medieval time. And what did they do? They forsook the world, everything. They sold everything, gave it to the poor, and then they went out to the desert to meet God and to experience God. So the question is that what Christian life is about? Now, I'm not saying that that is wrong, but if it is a Christian life is for everyone. If you have 100 Christians, that 100 people cannot go out to the wilderness all by themselves and be living in a cave and just meditate and pray and then do all that. But that's not for everyone. There's a movement in America, a prayer movement. And what they do is a 7 days every day camp where they take turns and they have a 24-hour praying. They're praying 24/7, right? But is it livable? Is it realistic? It is only possible if somebody pays me, donates the money, and I do the fundraising, and I go into the retreat center, and that's all I do. I pray, I read God's word, and I worship, and I do that. But that's why some people don't want to go to church. When they go to church, all the message they are hearing is what? You have to sacrifice, you have to give up, you have to give offering to church, you have to serve, you have to pray, you have to do evangelism. You are tired and weary. He told the people, come to me and I will give you rest. And my yoke is easy. I don't know how many Christians really experience Jesus' yoke is light and easy. It's not difficult. Can you rejoice with God? That's the question. And the reason why I cannot rejoice with God, because I'm not interested in sinners coming back to the Lord. That's wonderful for them. I did that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but that doesn't apply to me. That's number one. And number two, because the source of my joy is not God. I'm not interested in whether he's happy or not. The woman and the shepherd said what? Come and rejoice with me. There's an invitation to rejoice. And so here is God inviting us, come, rejoice with me. But what do? No. My real joy is if I can just have a less influence of God and I could be in the world and enjoy this world. That's where my joy is.
On the one side, that's the kind of place you want to go to where the message is always positive and light and you will be blessed with riches and wealth and your life will be great. But the other side is kind of, that's not the correct way of looking at God's word. And so there's this duality of fighting between living a life for Christ that is blessed and rich and full of joy, but then also there's hardship, suffering, endurance, perseverance. And so I think in the Christian circle, there's that division. Or
you could say too extreme, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it's like this. In order to truly experience joy, I need to pay the price. And that price is called suffering. And I may not get that reward now, but like you said, eventually I will receive that reward in heaven. That's number one, right? There is that assumption. Second assumption is, I truly believe that there cannot be happiness now unless you are in the world. So what we're thinking here is, basically, here I am, I'm looking at the world, I'm looking at God, and the world, it seems like there is pleasure. Whatever you want to call it, sensuality and all this. God, you can say there is purity, holiness. Right? And this is how we look at it. But what I have, what I desire, is not so much of holiness, but what I desire is pleasure. Right? But that's our assumption. And this is how we look at it. So like, I don't know if you heard of John Piper. He talks about our desire for God that brings a true pleasure. Right? There's a pleasure in worshiping. this holy God. So there's he wrote many articles on that. Okay? So many people have that, and but the desire that we have here is what the Bible often call it, sinful desire. Right? And that sinful desire is worldly pleasure. Right? But we talk a lot about sinful desire, and we have to suppress that. We have to have a self-control and all that. But we never talk about the joy of this purity, of this holiness. Because as soon as you talk about holiness, all of a sudden you become very serious, right? You don't laugh, right? This is not, it's holy, untouchable. Oh, that's how we look at it. But the desire that we have is a sinful desire, and we have this pleasure. So we really believe, can I get this pleasure from this? And that's where the prosperity gospel comes from. Prosperity gospel is, this is what I want. This is what I want. I want wealth. I want health. Wealth, health, that's what I want. Right? But this is what I was seeking, but then I'm very limited. Not everyone, you have millions of people out there, only 1% actually are wealthy and healthy. I can't have this. So what do I need? I need a religion. I need God. I need God to help me to get this. I need God to satisfy my desire. Right? That's why I need God. That's why health, wealth, prosperity gospel is very popular. Why? Because I was doing so bad in my business, and I ended up divorced, and my family and all that I was miserable. And then Jesus Christ came to my life and brought this joy and happiness, and then my life is now much happier. My business is doing so well. I'm making more money than ever before. I'm so thankful to God. Right? I'm so thankful to God. So if you believe in Jesus and if you trust Him, your life can be happier. Right?
I make a choice, the world and the God.
Okay.
I make a choice. So this problem, where is which of two?
Mm-hmm. Will I choose? Uh-huh. And we feel like we're always caught in between the two, the world and God, right? And we never get to see God in the world. We tend to separate God and the world. Either it's world or God, But what we find here is that God is actively involved in the world by His waiting. Right? He's waiting for their sinners to turn back to Him. But for us, we feel like I was like that too. I was like the second son. I came back, but how come there's still no joy? This is a problem. Right? And that's where we go to the next week about the first son. And because the focus of the parable here is not the second son, but the first son, right? That's us. Most of us, we never went out, but we were very on. So, how do some people in this world view God? According to some, which I covered that, they want to be free. They just don't want to be restricted by God. Okay? Reading verses 17 through 20, who can turn to God? Well, if you say, most likely you'll say, those who do not have any money. The primary character in the parable is God, whose heart was revealed by the life of His Son, Jesus Christ. That's another thing that we find here in this parable. the tolerance. And Bible does talk about that tolerance. What does he tolerate? He tolerates our wrongdoings. Because if God brings an immediate judgment, then I don't think anyone can live another day. No one will survive. Right? So there is a tolerance. This is the reason why a lot of people think that God doesn't exist. If God does exist, then why is he allowing the bad people to become worse? Right? People don't turn to God just because everything went wrong in their life. They will most likely blame God. Right? He focused on the fact that he came back. Because not many people will come back to God. That's a miracle. People don't come to God just because they're in suffering. There's no guarantee. Just because you're wealthy, God has blessed you so much and you realize, I'm so thankful that God has blessed me. If somebody comes to you, I thank God for giving me this wonderful harvest. I don't lie, I don't cheat, I donate so much money. What do you say to that person? He acknowledged God. He was enjoying life in his own way.
Yeah.
And I'll say to him, acknowledge God. And you may thank him, but you don't have a relationship with this God. It is only one way. As a matter of fact, you don't care who this God is. Whether this God is a God of Buddhism, whether this God is a God of Hinduism, as long as you believe in the natural, a supernatural being, that's your God. Or rather, can I say it this way? You are serving God, acknowledging God that you created. Your own way. So you created this God. But you don't know if this God exists or not. So you don't have that real relationship with this real God. So that's what the problem is. Right? So I'm here to tell you about this real God. Because this is what happened in Acts chapter 17 when Paul went outside of now the Jewish world. When Paul went to Athens, they had no idea about this Jewish God. They believe in all kinds of God. And so for them, they were completely happy with this. You can believe any God you want. Well, what's the problem? But Paul went there and he was introducing this God that you do not know.